We are celebrating 75 years of India's independence, and we're also looking back at 75 years of the auto industry. And one company that's been there for a large part of that journey is Apollo Tyres. And with me is Satish Sharma, President and Director of Apollo Tyres. Satish, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
Apollo Tyres, founded in 72, started making tires in the 70s. Clearly at a time when the whole industry was still very controlled, regulated, not much technology at that time. I think we were just making basic cross-ply tires. So just wanted to get your perspective, how could it have been back then, given the state of the industry and even the supplier base, which was almost non-existent?
Yeah, when I wasn't around at that point in time. I was born in 67. So, but yeah, I'm just visualizing that period was a tough period for Apollo Tyres in particular. The technology for the tire industry, for a large portion of the tire industry, was coming from outside. At least theoretically, it was coming from outside. I was told that nothing really much came because the bias tires had, even then, the radialization had been big. So it was tough times. The Indian terrain was very hostile, and therefore the Indian tire industry had to evolve on its own and develop products which were very much India-centric. And quite honestly, Hormazd, I don't think the kind of tires that we needed existed anywhere in the world. So we got to stand on our own feet very early on, and we had unique products, and the tire industry was able to evolve itself fairly rapidly in tune with the country's growth, I would imagine.
So that's interesting. So what you're saying is we had our unique conditions, which in a way are still very relevant now. So, thicker sidewalls, they want mileage sometimes more than grip. Do you think these attributes, which Indian consumers have wanted for decades, are still very relevant still? Or is it shifting and people want more performance-oriented products as well?
Answer to that question is both a yes and a no. Our inherent desire for more life out of any product in India is just insatiable. And that's what makes us uniquely different. We want to, get the maximum value out of a product. So that stays. But on top of that, with the changing infrastructure, and regulations have got a big role to play in this. So the regulations are ensuring that the Indian market is very fast merging with the rest of the world. And that brings in unique performance parameters which are important. And there are many consumers which are beginning to realize the importance of noise, for example, of grip, safety parameters like braking in wet.
Correct.
Especially in your city, for example.
Right.
So many of these things are happening. The current regulations which are on the anvil will only accentuate this need, the latent need, I should say, which is not so present, that is not very evident, but it's emerging. So performance parameters are emerging, but I don't see the need of mileage going away. So again, what India would have to do...
But sometimes these requirements are conflicting, isn't it? I mean, let's say whether it's wet weather performance or some of these, doesn't it contradict sometimes with the mileage performance?
Yeah, but the magic lies in optimizing the polarized worlds.
Right.
And I guess that's what most Indian companies, automotive companies, are good at, and that's why they are. Many companies have not been so successful in our atmosphere, even though we promise such a huge market,
right,
and everything. But the uniqueness of our market still sort of challenges the best in the world.
Right, and absolutely. In fact, this global shift over decades towards more low-profile tires, lower aspect ratio tires, clearly our road conditions don't allow that. And the sense I get is, even for sidewall constructions, we have two plies vis-a-vis single ply. Just wanted you to touch upon that as to how the technology also has evolved, and are we still sticking to certain fundamentals on tire construction, just given the fact that our conditions don't allow us to adopt, let's say, certain global structure construction?
Yeah, I mean, we started off, so our tires are definitely more robust than for the rest of the world. But this gap is sort of narrowing. And you spoke about the two-ply. The two-ply is sort of become what is called as an envelope construction. So it's not two full plies going all around the product. It's a quasi.
Right.
So it's again something. And very funnily, when we do the manufacturing machines for these products, some of these are not available around the world. So we've also evolved our manufacturing solutions to be able to produce these. But honestly, the differences are converging, and these little uniquenesses are okay. I mean, every market has their uniqueness points, and these are fine. Some amount of improvement in infrastructure, which has happened so much, is also helping the cause too.
Right. And after liberalization, obviously there was a lot of competition coming in. Joint ventures people were looking at getting into. That was really a trend at that time, happened in the auto industry. One question was there a worry back then, and you felt you had to collaborate, and being quite frank, with Michelin, there was a kind of, let's say, honeymoon period, but never worked out. So just wanted to run through, what it must have been like in terms of the industries opening up to global players. They can set up here. So was that a worry, and what was the need to look at tying up at that point, and then finally didn't work out? You all managed independently quite well.
Yeah, honestly, for us it was always an opportunity. The market opening up, we never felt that it is something which is going to destroy us or is going to wipe us away. We were always actually looking forward to the market opening up and working along with the world's best. There was and always has been an inherent sort of way that our organization is built. So when this joint venture that you mentioned with Michelin was happening, we were actually very much energized by it, very much enthused. We wanted it to happen, and we, from our point of view, both the organizations put together something which we both believed is going to work out.
But not at the cost of independence.
As it progressed after it was stitched, and there were certain portions of it which did not play out, which at the cost of then independence,
right,
made us feel that perhaps we are giving away too much for this dream that we visualized. And then we saw that one of the biggest things in life really is self-reliance, and we need to stand up on our own feet on anything that we want to achieve. And that was in a way a pivotal shift for Apollo. And our vice chairman, chairman made that call that we are, getting self-reliant on technology. If India can send a man to the space, then tire technology should be within our reach, and then we seem to know our rubber well. So that clarion call, and everybody in the company sort of raised to that call, and wonders happened after that.
Right, no, that's interesting. I think a lot of companies went through that phase, that little bit of so-called butterflies in their stomach. Listen, we better partner with someone or we'll get left behind. We've seen that in the auto industry with the car makers as well. So I think clearly it was, this whole push towards self-reliance and independence. I think then the next step was to push to being as global as possible, acquisition of Vredestein. So just to understand, was then the next strategy to kind of be as global as possible, acquire technology and organizations rather than just partner?
Yeah, we set up an audacious goal when we set ourselves free. We set up an audacious goal, and from $500 million, we set $2 billion in a span of 4 to 5 years. which really we did not know exactly how it's going to happen. And that's the first time we said inorganic is also a key strategic element for us. And two acquisitions happened in quick succession in 2006 and 2009. And that sort of, exposed us to the world and what's out there, and also gave us a lot of self-belief in what we are doing is actually is at a very good level. And we always, as an organization, genetic code has been of always learning was one of our core values, then still a core value. And we absorbed a lot, and we sort of reinvented ourselves, the organization, in whatever format. But at a core, it has always been technology, it has always been performance of the product. Those are uncompromising things behind which we went, we invested, and we were the first ones in India who really looked at the research and development and said, this is not just a re-engineering game. It is something that you need to front load, front invest, and the rest of the magic is going to follow. It's all about the product.
Right.
That was our belief, and we followed that path.
But what's interesting and is, you talk about technology, how technology, you've pushed for. But, for a company coming out of, let's say, decades of being sheltered, protected, being unable to have evolved technology or even got, let's say, access to global technology, was it a steep learning curve? And to be honest, I was still on that learning curve because, we really lost a lot of decades. If you look at it theoretically, only 30 years, where some of the legacy tire manufacturers globally are over 100 years. So just want to understand in terms of, catching up. Obviously now you all are there, but was that a really steep learning curve, and that journey is still going on?
Yeah, it was a very steep learning curve, very, very steep learning curve. But again, I'll just trace back. Mr. Kanwar has led us from the front on this journey, and he's always sort of gone and met people outside and created those networks for us to sort of build on, and Neeraj sort of followed on in that path by again reinforcing technology, etc. So in the early days, we looked at what we knew. We got the best from outside. They worked with us, we learned from them, so they sort of hand-holded us, but we were also open to learning. And success has got a funny thing, it's very virtuous. Once you get onto that virtuous cycle, there's no turning back. And we put our resource allocation was on the right. So while the learning curve was steep, it was also very enriching, very energizing, and R&D people who were there with us are still there with us. I mean,
right.
They've just got stronger and stronger, and they have... And just to look at them, how they have reinvented themselves, each one of them is now a specialist of mammoth proportions, and they are right at the cutting edge of what you get anywhere else in the world.
Right. So that way it must be quite fulfilling to see that, as far as technology, you're just catching up, right? Then I think Vredestein, another turning point for Apollo Tyres, in the sense you've got really a legacy, strong brand, a European brand in your kitty as well. Yeah.
Vredestein was a huge move. It's a huge move, and those products, and it really helped shore up Apollo's car game in a very big way. The CV we were always very, very good at.
Yeah, that's been your forte.
Yeah. And we even with a small joint venture that lasted only a year or so, we absorbed a lot from Michelin at that time, and we just continued to go on. But I would say, as far as car is concerned, the acquisition of Vredestein has been absolutely a key point. And there's some absolutely great technology in Vredestein resting there, 111 years of experience, all sort of coming to us, and we working together as a team. In the initial years, we made in two R&Ds, and the European R&D was giving the car technology to both the companies, and we were giving the CV technology to the rest of the group. But we recalibrated it later on, and now both R&Ds are self-sufficient. But yes, you're right. Vredestein was an orbit-shifting move for us.
Right. And, just coming back in a way full circle, 75 years ago, very kind of planned economy, totally protected. looks like that is coming back again with sort of deglobalization. A lot of protectionist policies. Being frank, even there in the tire industry, maybe for geopolitical reasons. How do you feel about that? Because at some point it was all open. You were even, let's say, had to deal with cheap imports coming in. There's a bit of a control on that. Do you still think we need some level of protectionism?
So there's an answer in your question, which is that one has to distinguish between injury to the industry versus protecting your market. So if whatever you have built, it's a very capital intensive industry. India wants to go from a 15% manufacturing contribution to 25% contribution to GDP. If all of that has to play out, you have to give a fair play to the industry for a certain portion of time to be able to deliver that to you. And a lot of investments, capex and everything is going. Now when you allow all that to be squashed by dumping practices or using your market to sort of predatory steps and thereby killing the potential of what could be so I think that's a distinction that one needs to make. So to that extent, dumping of cheap imports, we very much think is the right thing, not just for India, it's happening across all developed economies of the world.
You mean putting up, protecting against that?
Protecting against the dumping any market
and
injuring the local market. The other portion is that there is, of course, a little bit of nudge to say that we want you to come and produce here and create jobs and create, when you want this market, the size of this market, there is also that potential that needs to be exercised. And on the other hand, there are various enabling policies for people to look at and companies to do. So it's a mixed bag. One can always argue that it could be this or that.
Yeah. Broadly, I think the argument is the scale. If there's not scale in certain sizes, do you insist on those? I don't know what you feel about that. I can understand in the mass sizes, 14 to even 18 and maybe 19, but beyond that, is there really a market for people to invest in manufacturing?
Yeah, scale is a very important point. In India, if you agree with me that, nobody puts a scale plant. You just, because of fear labor issues or some power issues or logistics issues or some strikes somewhere, etc. So you sort of
ramp up slowly.
So you're anti-scale by design.
Right.
But all of that is changing. I mean, our Chennai plant is now a 1,000-ton plant. I mean, it's one of the largest plants in Asia. And it does give you economies of scale. And India has a huge exporting potential. Indian tire industry could really be a poster child for the country and do wonders. Our exports, for example, have increased 50% this year. And sustaining. Just because we are converging with the rest of the world, we have the technology, we have world-class people, managements, we create the great products and which the world needs.
Right. And last question, Satish, just winding up. It's been a great and fascinating perspective. Thanks for that. But I wanted to maybe just gaze a bit into the future. We've talked about 75 years. Not going to ask you about the next 75. Very hard to predict. None of us will be around. Yeah. But, what do you see are really strong emerging future trends in the tire space? And, how is Apollo going to be future ready for that? In the sense, obviously, EVs are coming. So LRR tires, low rolling resistance is happening. Noise will, I'm sure, become an issue because, there's no combustion engine sound, so that's there. So these are the obvious ones, but do you see any really, radical trends on the horizon?
So one thing is our vehicle park is expanding in various dimensions. So for example, let's take motorcycles, for example, which was forever a commuter market, is suddenly becoming a performance market. There's a lot of action happening in the performance space. You're becoming an SUV kind of a car within the PV space. SUV is becoming very, very, in the tractor you have polarization. I mean, at the lower end you have all these orchards and vineyards, a lot of implements happening. Countries getting made, so you have all kind of earth movers, all kind of construction equipments. There are airports and ports getting made, so you have very specialist products that you need there. So one thing which is happening at a scale which we cannot perhaps realize, but the speed at which it's happening and the scale at which it's happening, is that India has got a insatiable demand for all kinds of products, of mobility, of moving equipments, of moving people, and so on and so forth. And all of them are setting base here, and so that's something which we have decided to be an all-range play in India, and we are. Then within everything there is a premiumization. The technology curve is going forward, whether it's being pushed by the change of the powertrain or even otherwise. The regulations are doing that. BS4 to BS6, for instance. A whole lot of planet drivers, which
Right.
is
Environment.
challenging mobility in many ways. Whole lot of industry 4.0, IoT, artificial intelligence, etc., which is asking a tire to become smart and intelligent and have sensors embedded in it, and capture data like never before, and then bring in use cases to do several things. Business model side, things might change in the sense that you might go the subscription way, you might go for cost per kilometer. The whole retailing of tire is might get challenged, and so there are various things which are happening. All of them are very exciting,
Right.
and we feel that all these disruptions is exactly the kind of playground that a company like ours looks forward to, because we believe we can create something out of this which will make sense to customers, and we can sort of get their acknowledgement, which is always our passion and desire to do.
Right, and Satish, ending with the consumer, clearly he is king in whatever they buy. Earlier, tires more or less like a commodity. We've seen a sudden, maybe a slight interest in tires a bit more. Do you see that interest growing, or the way mobility is shaping out, where even mobility is going to be in some ways commoditized with EVs and finally autonomous, that the consumer interest in tires also may go down as a result? Or how do you keep the consumer engaged going forward?
Yeah, consumer engagement in tires has always been tricky. It is, again, either they are very engaged.
Yeah.
I mean, you have consumers who are like, they know their tires very well, and that tribe is growing. But at a larger level, it's still about something which the industry has to tackle in their own way, and come out with innovative ways to engage the consumer. The digital technology, the social media, etc., all have played their part, and we continue to build awareness, but it's always challenging.
Right. And lastly, Satish, Apollo's just immediate future plans. I know EVs is one space. You're expanding, going global. Is there anything we can expect in the next 10, 15 years from, let's say, can we expect, let's say, even more global acquisitions?
So the last part, I think Neeraj well, and I leave that question between you and Neeraj, so I'll not take that on. It's clearly in his capacity to answer that one. But our current focus, Hormazd, is to be wedded to our vision, which is to be a $5 billion company by FY26, have great financials. All our stakeholders should enjoy the ride with us and share in that journey. Of course, our new drivers are a lot on sustainability, digitalization, and coming back to your previous question of engagement, one of the things, once these sensors and all come in and tires become intelligent, maybe there could be a window,
Right.
a vista where you could engage consumers more. Let's see how that happens.
Right.
But yeah, there's a ray of hope there.
Right. Very exciting future for sure, and clearly Apollo's got big plans. Satish, thanks so much for talking
Always
to
a
us.
pleasure, Hormazd.
Thank you.
Talking to you.
Thanks so
Always a
much.
pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.